Bubba Scrubba, Fantasy Sports Advice and Analysis, Volume 3, Episode 10. Marker. Good morning, everybody. As a follow-up to my video a few days ago regarding recap of preseason week 1, I looked at the NFC teams. Today we're going to look at the AFC teams. So without further ado, let's get into it. Houston Texans camp has been mostly quiet. There's been no real word about what's going on with David Montgomery. I think he's probably the most intriguing fantasy prospect outside of Nico Collins. One name to keep an eye on is Jaden Higgins, who's competing for the wide receiver 2 position. We also have Tank Dell coming back from injury, the catastrophic injury he suffered 2 years ago. Obviously, that might slow him down physically, and he's going to be a little bit rusty because he hasn't played football in a couple of years. So this Higgins has been, by all accounts, lighting it up in training camp, and so we need to keep an eye on him for fantasy purposes. Jacksonville Jaguars camp has also been pretty silent. Obviously, they have tons of potential superstar players for fantasy. One of the biggest battles is this Bayshul Tootin versus Chris Rodriguez. Now, in my previous division previews, I had hyped up this Tootin, but it looks like it's going to be more of an even timeshare than anybody expected. I still think Tootin has obviously the higher upside, being the second-year player, more speed, more wiggle. Just more upside in general. However, this Chris Rodriguez is a serious contender for short yardage and touchdown work. And the head coach, Liam Cohen, has basically played him up and said, look, this is going to be more 50-50 than anybody probably could have imagined. News out of Tennessee Titans camp has been fairly positive with the new regime in place. I watched the preseason game being a 49ers fan, and Cam Ward played, I think, 2 or 3 drives to start the game, and didn't look bad, didn't look good. Obviously, he's got some running ability. He has a decent arm. They have upgraded the weapons. Speaking of which, this Carnell Tate out of Ohio State was basically invisible in the game. Calvin Ridley did make a few catches. I think personally for fantasy, the most viable wide receiver, at least maybe early on, is going to be this Wendell Robinson, who they signed from the New York Giants. He's going to be playing out of the slot. I think the Tennessee offense is nothing to write home about. So in those situations, when you're looking for productive players to have at the end of your bench and or for streaming purposes, I'm looking for guys that are just getting peppered with targets. Maybe they're not going to get you the yak. Maybe they're not going to get you all the touchdowns. But, just to get 5-6 catches a game, you want those guaranteed points. Indianapolis Colts camp has been active for all the wrong reasons. The main news coming out of Indy is that Alec Pierce, the wide receiver that they re-signed to a monster contract this offseason, did undergo ankle surgery, and they're now saying he was supposed to be ready for the start of training camp. That's what every team says, of course. But now they made an announcement that said he's going to be out for the duration of training camp. So week 1 is definitely in doubt. Obviously, you don't want to see this guy missing any practices whatsoever. On the heels of this, the Colts went out and signed old reliable Keenan Allen, so that I think that informs the decision there that Pierce is going to be out for quite some time. I'm not saying that you avoid drafting Pierce, but obviously he's an IR guy, so if you can get him super deep, like last pick, go ahead, take a chance on him if you have a slot to put him in. Josh Downs now is elevated to the wide receiver 1 position, and he's a guy that can play outside and inside. They can move him around the formation. He was split in time last year between flanker and split end, so I think he's going to move into the flanker role and be their main wide receiver weapon. But I think that the main beneficiary from this whole thing is Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren, for a rookie tight end last year, obviously had a pretty decent year, but going into year 2, it's only going to get better for him. And with Daniel Jones coming off of that Achilles injury, we just don't know how much drive he's going to have in that leg, at least to start the season. So I feel as if that Warren running underneath routes and stuff is going to be much more valuable. And because of the position he plays, I think you're bumping him up into top 5 territory. There's been little to no news out of the Baltimore Ravens camp. Of course, we're want to see this new look offense with Lamar, with Zay Flowers, with Derrick Henry, but I think we're going to have to wait till this weekend for that. The talk of camp has been a rookie by the name of Jacoby Lane. He's competing for the wide receiver 3 position. The beat writers have said he's been the star of camp. And so he did play extensively in the first preseason game and played pretty well. So he's definitely on the radar for fantasy, a later round pick. And then see what you have. Could potentially move up to wide receiver 2 because Rashad Bateman has not shown anything pretty much his whole career. Pittsburgh Steelers camp has been all about this quad-headed quarterback competition. Some of the news that has come out recently is between Rico Dowdle and Jaylen Warren and their kind of battle. It's not a battle. By all accounts, Dowdle is the RB1 in this offense. He's going to be the 2-down banger, and Warren's going to be more of the 3rd-down guy. But a lot like the Travis Etienne, Alvin Kamara situation in New Orleans, I kind of actually expect this to be more like Dowdle getting 2/3 of the first, 2nd down carries, and then Warren getting 1/3 of them. And I think Warren is going to be more exclusively the 3rd-down back, while Dowdle is going to be more exclusively, I think, the goal line back. Dowdle's getting drafted earlier. I don't think that there's any reason to shy away from any player, especially if you're trying to fill out, let's say, your RB4 position. Cleveland Browns camp has been all about the quarterback battle as well, the Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders battle. Right now, it looks like Deshaun Watson has the upper hand. Shedeur Sanders is going to be starting the preseason game this weekend, and then Todd Monken is going to name a starter apparently shortly thereafter. I think Watson is the easy call to get, the first crack at this job. I think it potentially elevates the Browns pass catchers, although I don't like any of these. I don't like Jerry Jeudy. This is it Darnell or Daryl Boston. He was a rookie last year. He played pretty decent. Maybe I'm, missing the boat on this. Also, this KC Concepcion actually played pretty well in that first preseason game. This Boston and Concepcion, I think, are viable, late round and last pick kind of things. I'm not drafting Jerry Jeudy. Not much word out of Cincinnati Bengals camp. The only exception being is that they actually played their starters in week 1 or preseason week 1, which in the past they never did. I think because Cincinnati has historically, at least in the Zach Taylor era, gotten off to such slow starts. They always start off 0-2 or something like that, and they always have to crawl back into the season. I think they're trying to do something a little bit different this year by, just getting the offense into rhythm by having their starters play. Nothing really to see here. Of course, it's all just about keeping guys healthy. In New England Patriots camp, the big battle has been A.J. Brown versus this Keyshawn Butte. There's not really a battle. Obviously, they just gave up significant draft capital to get A.J. Brown, but this Butte, at least in the beginning part of camp, was the guy that Drake May was actually targeting more, especially on the deeper routes. You also have this Mac Hollins there as well. This is kind of a quagmire, I think, for fantasy. Obviously, A.J. Brown is the headliner in the position group. That being said, I think the guy's being overdrafted. I mean, when he was in a better situation and younger in Philadelphia, I mean, he never did light the world on fire for a whole season. He would have stretches, but more like an all name, no game kind of guy. I'm more interested in this Butte, but then I just read something that said that they were thinking that the beat writers were thinking that New England wants to move on from this guy and are giving him an extensive look and having all these flowing things come out because they're trying to trade him. So I don't know about all that, but something to keep an eye on. I think personally, I skipped over AJ Brown. I did a mock draft recently. I don't want him. I don't know. He's just too much of a head case. I'd rather have this Butte, assuming he's on the team still, because you can get him for virtually free. The other scuttlebutt is the running back position, the Travion Henderson versus Ramondre Stevenson kind of battle. Never was really a battle. There's not going to be a clear-cut starter here. It's obviously a little bit of a quagmire for fantasy purposes. They're both going to have value. Henderson is more of the home run hitter, and Stevenson's more of the steady Eddie veteran. I think Stevenson will probably end up getting just a tad bit more goal line looks. So if you're just looking for the guy who, you know, if Travion has an issue in pass pro in a game and Drake May gets blown up, then you know he's coming off of the field and Ramondre is going to get everything he can eat. And this should be, by all accounts, another good season for New England, a good offense. So personally, they're not going that far apart, but I think I'd rather have Ramondre just because he's, a little more reliable. But I can't fault anybody for going for Travion because, again, he is the home run hitter. New York Jets camp. The big news is that Breece Hall got injured in practice yesterday, injured his groin. They said it's minor. I don't know what it is about the NFL this year. There's been a lot of guys going down with groin injuries. I don't like groin injuries on running backs or wide receivers for obvious reasons. Um, I'm not bullish on the New York offense whatsoever. I don't think Geno Smith is the answer. And this Cade Kublik or whatever, he played in the preseason game. It didn't look horrible, but I think that if they can't throw the ball, then it's going to be 8 in the box all year against Breece Hall, whether he's injured or not. I just don't think that there's much upside for this guy. Let somebody else take him. Buffalo Bills camp has all been all about the wide receiver kind of splits here with DJ Moore coming into town. You have Khalil Shakir, you have Keon Coleman. How are their reps going to shake out? I think again, this is like a three-headed monster. I don't really. This is a position I'm avoiding. I just don't know who's going to stand out from this group, and I don't think anybody is because I think the two standouts are Josh Allen and James Cook, and that's pretty much it. Not to say that these wide receivers don't have value. I mean, but it's going to be like whack a mole. Which guy's going to pop off in any given week? Now, that being said, I will, say with the caveat that DJ Moore has the best opportunity to separate himself. But I think 30 years old, it's just, it's not like this guy is like a younger player with untapped upside. They know what they're getting with him. He's just an extra kind of weapon for Allen to throw to. More interesting is the Dalton Kincaid question for all the tight end faders. I mean, of course, this guy's a potential very low end number one tight end. I suppose you could do a lot worse if you're completely ignoring the position and looking for somebody at the end. With Buffalo just having such a great offense, and the rising tide lifts all boats. But the guy has been injured, but we're gonna see how he does through camp. Hopefully, he'll come through camp uninjured. Maybe he'll have a big week to start the year, and that'll set the tone for his whole season. Miami Dolphins actually didn't look too bad in their first preseason game. They played their starters for at least 2 or 3 series, and Malik Willis looked pretty decent. He threw it to this Washington quite a bit, Malik Washington quite a bit. So in the battle of who's going to be the number one wide receiver in Miami, I think Washington has the slight edge to start the year. I don't think that's saying a lot because they are going to run the ball a lot, and Achan got a ton of carries. So I do worry about him though because um, just for the amount of bulk that this guy's going to get as far as the work is concerned, which is great for fantasy. Don't get me wrong. I think personally, he's a guy that I kind of think twice about. I did a mock draft recently, and it was between him and Derrick Henry, and I went with Derrick Henry. It's almost a coin flip, but you want a guy to get, the bulk of the work, and it looked like he was getting it in preseason. And personally, I think Miami might be just a little bit better because this Malik Willis can run the ball. He has that dual threat capability. They looked fairly cohesive. Then again, it was preseason week 1. Kansas City Chiefs camp has been pretty quiet. The big news is Rashee Rice coming into camp. He's healthy. He's getting reps. I think you draft this guy and hope for the best. He's going to be good for 6 to 8 catches a game regardless. And which is rare for a possession receiver. This guy's going to get red zone looks. So in a recent mock draft I did, I got him in I think round 4. And I was happy to have him be my second. I think he was my second wide receiver. And You should too. I mean, Pat Mahomes likes throwing it to him. Now, the health of Mahomes' knee is going to inform this decision. I think everybody's expecting or thinks that he's fully healthy or gonna be fully healthy. I don't know if that's the case or not. So we could be kind of projecting here on hopes and dreams, but until further notice, Rashee Rice is a safe pick. Denver Broncos camp has also been pretty silent. Jaylen Waddle just returned to practice, I think today, and so he had been out for the better part of a week. One thing I was very intrigued by was looking at the preseason rankings on this mock draft I did, is that they have Waddle going in like the 5th or 6th round, and you can get Cortland Sutton for virtually free. I say that if you want a piece of the Denver offense, specifically if you want a piece of the Denver passing offense, I would pick Cortland Sutton all day long at his draft pick. I got him. I drafted him. I got him in like the 10th round or the 12th round or something like that. I think most people think this Waddle's going to just take over, but I don't think so. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to just dominate all the targets. I think he's a little bit younger, but there's nothing in his profile to say that this guy is going to just turn into a dominator. And personally, I think Cortland Sutton is being vastly underrated in fantasy drafts. The Vegas Raiders. I watched a pretty good chunk of their preseason game. Ashton Jeanty didn't play. I didn't watch the beginning, so I don't know if he played or didn't play, but the vibes coming out of camp are still the same. This guy looks like he's a safe pick at the end of the first round, at the turn, beginning of the second. I thought about it, in the position that I was picking at, but ultimately he got snatched in front of me. So I'm kind of climbing onto the bandwagon a little bit for this guy. I think he's going to be, 3 downs, all he can eat. And I think the Raiders are going to be better this year. I think the coaching is better. And specifically, I watched Fernando Mendoza in 2 drives. And I will say this, he has the size, the arm. He looks the part. He does look the part. Now, the question is, how effective are the pass catchers going to be? Obviously, Brock Bowers is a stud. And so then you've got this Trey Tucker, you've got this Jalen Naylor, you've got a few guys that, potentially somebody's going to step up, right? Or it could just be the Brock Bowers and Ashton Jeanty show. But the sooner that Mendoza starts for the Raiders, the better. Last but certainly not least is the LA Chargers. And so they had their first preseason game. They did not play Omarion Hampton or Keaton Mitchell. They did play Kamani Vidal extensively, which basically informs you that Hampton and Mitchell are the 1-2 guys in this offense. Vidal, I think, is a distant third. He's a serviceable starter if something happens to one of these other guys. But McDaniel has basically been talking up this Hampton and Mitchell all offseason. Now, I don't know what to make of this. On one hand, when I first, a lot of people were on this Hampton, and they're just like, go for it, go for it. And then McDaniel came out and said, oh no, 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 I like all 3 guys, and so the needle goes the other way, and you go, well, can you trust them? Now the needle's kind of creeping back the other way, and I think Hampton is a pretty safe pick. He's going to be grouped in that Ken Walker, Derrick Henry, Achane, Chase Brown, Hampton. They're all going to be in that kind of glut at the end of the mid to second round. I'm not sure you can really do bad with any of these picks, so it might just be a thing of which guy falls to you. I will say this, the caveat I will say is that the running back position, the way that people have been talking about the drafts this year and the tiers is that a lot of people's strategy is going running back, no matter what, because there is much better wide receiver value later in the draft. So unless you can get a guy like Jamar Chase or Puka Nacua, one of these top-end super studs, you're probably looking at picking a running back. I had 5th pick in a 10-team draft, and I picked Cook at number 5. So, well, that's the AFC recap. I think the next video, I will show you this mock draft I did. It was a 10-team league. I picked number 5, so, right in the middle, so it kind of informs you as to what you can expect. I'm a guy that kind of goes all over the board. I don't pick the whatever the number one guy is in any given, slot. I usually kind of jump around a little bit. So it'll be fun to share that. I'm going to do a few more drafts, do a 12 teamer, maybe I'll even do a 14 teamer and share the results with you guys shortly. Talk to you later.